The air in the university library was thick with the scent of old paper and the quiet anticipation of finals, but for me, all the atmospheric tension was focused on the girl sitting across the worn oak table. Ilara. She'd been tracing the rim of her coffee cup with a delicate fingertip, her gaze lost in the pages of a dense textbook, and then, she looked up. Not a casual glance, but a direct, unblinking connection that felt less like an acknowledgement and more like an electrical circuit closing. My breath itched, a small, involuntary spasm in my chest, and I could feel the frantic, heavy drumming of my own heart against my ribs, a percussion section completely out of sync with the library's solemn hush. A stray strand of her dark, wavy hair had fallen over her cheek, and without thinking, without even a logical trigger, I reached across the table. It was just a brush, the back of my knuckles ghosting over her skin as I tucked the curl behind her ear, a motion so quick and unplanned it felt like a bolt of pure instinct. The touch was like fire, an unbearable heat that traveled straight up my arm, and I saw her eyes widen, not in surprise, but in a sudden, powerful recognition. The charged silence between us stretched, vibrating with an unspoken question, a bold invitation. A slow, almost imperceptible smile played on her lips, a silent piece of mischief, and she leaned forward, her voice dropping to a low, husky whisper that barely cut through the quiet. "You really shouldn't do things like that, Alex," she murmured, her eyes holding mine with an intensity that promised chaos, her proximity stealing the oxygen from my lungs. The scent of her, light, warm, and utterly intoxicating, was all I could focus on. She pushed her book aside, finally abandoning the pretense of studying, and the shift was palpable, confirming that this was no longer about deadlines or degrees. The atmosphere had changed from studious to intensely personal, a bubble of undeniable attraction forming around us. We were impossibly close, the space between our faces closing in, and I knew, with a certainty that shook my long-held cynicism about love, that I was about to cross a line that could never be uncrossed. I felt her fingers tentatively find mine beneath the table, her touch sending a jolt of pure, exhilarating danger through me. In that perfect, suspended moment, a soft chime broke the spell, her phone, resting screen up on the table, lighting up with a single, incoming text. Her eyes flicked down to the notification, and then back to mine, and the captivating warmth I'd been swimming in evaporated instantly, replaced by a sudden, paralyzing shade of pure shock, then horror. Her hand recoiled from mine as if she'd been burned, her lips parting as the color drained from her face. I looked down at the screen, and the one message there, visible for only a second, made the world tilt on its axis and instantly shattered every romantic belief I'd ever been ready to adopt. The message, just 6 words, had ripped the floor out from under us. Ilara snatched the phone, her movements jerky and panicked, tucking it away as if it were radioactive. But the damage was done. My mind was reeling, fixated on the screen. "He's suspicious. Be careful tonight. Alex, I need to go," she whispered, her voice fractured, the seductive confidence from moments before completely gone. "Who is he?" I asked, the question a low, painful rasp, cutting through the remnants of our intense intimacy. I gripped the edge of the table, trying to anchor myself in the swirling reality. The sudden coldness in her eyes, the stark fear, was a brutal contrast to the playful fire she'd shown me only seconds ago. "It doesn't matter," she insisted, standing up abruptly, knocking her chair slightly. "Please, just forget this happened. All of it." Forget this? How could I forget the way her hand had felt in mine, the way her eyes had promised a future I hadn't even realized I wanted? We had spent the last 2 months orbiting each other in the quiet library corners, exchanging loaded glances and accidental, lingering touches near the water cooler. It wasn't just physical attraction, it was a connection built on hours of subtle, shared vulnerability. We'd talked about dreams, about the crushing weight of expectation, about the unspoken loneliness that seemed to follow us both. I had believed I was seeing the real Ilara, the one who laughed easily at my clumsy jokes and whose gaze held a deep, soulful wisdom. But now, she looked like a stranger, one who was desperately trying to escape. "Ilara," I said, rising to stand opposite her, leaning in close despite her obvious retreat. The air between us was still charged, but the attraction was now laced with a bitter, confusing pain. "Look at me!" Her eyes met mine, brimming with a desperate sadness that mirrored my own sudden heartbreak. "I am not what you think I am, Alex," she confessed, the words heavy with hidden regret. I wish things were different." There was a deep ache in her voice, a flicker of the honesty I cherished. She was clearly trapped, tethered to some hidden, agonizing truth. In a final, desperate move, I reached out again, gently capturing her wrist. I didn't pull her closer, I just held her, allowing the warmth of her skin to momentarily soothe the frantic pounding in my chest. Her breath hitched again, and for a fleeting moment she leaned into the touch, a silent surrender to the attraction that clearly still burned between us. That small, instinctive lean, it was a promise, a confirmation of the mutual desire, the undeniable emotional bond that her hidden life was trying to crush. Then make them different, I urged, my voice barely a whisper, a plea. Tell me what's wrong. A tear tracked silently down her cheek, and she pulled her wrist free, stepping back until she hit the edge of the bookshelf. I can't. You don't understand the risks. She glanced nervously toward the library exit, her fear accelerating. Just please don't contact me. Not ever again. With that, she turned and fled, leaving me alone in the oppressive silence, the scent of her perfume a painful, lingering ghost in the air. The desire was still electric, the suspense unbearable, but the stark terror in her eyes confirmed the truth. Our connection was a secret, a profound, dangerous threat to the life she was living, a life that apparently belonged to he. 2 weeks. 2 weeks of silence, 2 weeks of trying to bury the memory of her confession and her desperate flight. But the quiet corners of the campus were haunted by her absence, and my internal world was a constant echo chamber of longing and agonizing curiosity. I couldn't forget the message, the raw fear on her face, or the undeniable heat of our connection. Then I saw her. Not alone, but in a crowded upscale downtown cafe, sitting opposite a man. He was older, sharply dressed, and possessed a chilling, possessive air as he dominated the conversation. Elara, however, was a muted version of herself. Her smile, usually so luminous and genuine with me, was stiff, a polite performance that didn't reach her eyes. She wore a delicate, gold necklace that I'd never seen before, a subtle marker of ownership that stoked a scorching, primal jealousy in my gut. I watched from across the street, shielded by the anonymity of a busy crosswalk, the scene playing out like a forbidden movie. He reached across the table and placed his hand over hers. It was a casual gesture, but the proprietary way his fingers curled around her skin sent a jolt of bitter rage and deep, aching loss through me. I imagined my own hand there, remembering the tentative, electrifying way she had interlaced her fingers with mine just before the chaos began. The temptation was excruciating, to walk in there, to claim the Elara I knew, the one whose eyes had promised me everything. But the look on her face, a blend of resignation and profound sadness, screamed a warning. This wasn't a choice, this was a cage. Then, a flicker. As the man turned his head to speak to the waiter, Elara's eyes flicked up, straight across the street. She saw me. The shock was momentary, immediately replaced by a look of intense, forbidden yearning. It was a silent scream, a brief, exposed moment where all the emotional conflict boiled over. Her lips parted slightly, and for that suspended second, she was the real Elara again, nervous, daring, and desperately wanting. It was a bold, risky admission in a public place, an unspoken message that this life, the one with him, was not the one she desired. She quickly dropped her gaze, her hand visibly tensing under his, but the damage was done. That shared glance, that raw expression of hidden longing, pushed us both closer to the breaking point. I knew I couldn't let it go. The knowledge that she was trapped, combined with the spicy sting of jealousy and the palpable memory of our attraction, was too potent. The fear of what was about to happen, a direct confrontation, a dangerous move, was now less compelling than the need to set her free, and the forbidden sense of us had never been stronger. I left the cafe and waited, my heart hammering a chaotic rhythm against my ribs. I knew her route home. I'd traced it countless times in my mind during the sleepless nights. I needed to know the truth, and the desperation in her eyes demanded I risk everything. An hour later, I was waiting in the shadows near the back entrance of her apartment building, a small, discreet block nestled away from the main road. The air was cold, damp with the late evening chill, mirroring the gnawing tension in my stomach. When her sedan pulled up, he was driving. He didn't bother to get out, waiting impatiently as Elara retrieved a small bag from the back seat. The interaction was cold, formal. He leaned over, gave her a swift, obligatory peck on the cheek, and drove away without a backward glance. As she fumbled with her keys at the dark, ivy-covered gate, I stepped out of the shadows. "Elara!" she gasped, dropping her keys with a sharp, metallic clatter. She spun around, her eyes widening in a mixture of terror and a deeply suppressed, powerful relief. The proximity was instant and overwhelming. We were alone, pressed into the small alcove of the entrance, the silence of the night wrapping around us like a thick blanket. "Alex! What are you doing here? You can't," she stammered, her voice low and frantic, but the fear in her eyes was now mixed with an undeniable, fierce longing. "I saw him," I interrupted, stepping closer, the scent of her expensive perfume, overlaid with the clean, cold night air, instantly intoxicating. "I saw the message. Tell me who he is and why you're terrified." She pressed her back against the wooden gate, trapped by my presence and the sheer, magnetic force of our unresolved feelings. "He's my fiancé, Alex. And he's powerful. Controlling. He watches everything." Her voice broke on the word fiancé, a confirmation that felt like a punch to the gut. The truth hung heavy in the air, a devastating barrier between us. The emotional energy peaked, raw and volatile. The forbidden nature of our closeness, the knowledge of the risks, only intensified the craving. I moved my hand slowly, deliberately, resting my palm flat against the cold stone wall just beside her head. I was inches away, close enough to feel the frantic rise and fall of her chest, the desperate pull of the attraction. Her eyes fluttered shut, a silent plea and a powerful submission to the unavoidable tension. "Then why did you look at me like that, Elara? At the cafe?" I whispered, my voice thick with both accusation and desire. "Why did you let me touch you in the library?" She opened her eyes, brimming with unshed tears, and lifted her hand, her fingertips tentatively grazing my cheek, a silent, bold declaration of her choice. "Because you make me feel alive, Alex. You make me forget all of this." The heat between us was explosive, threatening to consume the darkness. It was the breaking point. She leaned toward me, her confession having burned away the last layer of caution. I lowered my head, ready to close the final distance, ready to seize the moment, damn the consequences, when a sudden, blinding beam of light swept across the alcove. A car was slowly pulling around the corner, its headlights fixing directly onto us, and in the beam's stark illumination, I could clearly see the driver. It wasn't he, but a man whose face I instantly recognized, one of his associates, someone I'd seen in the cafe with them. He was staring straight at us. Elara gasped, her eyes wide with terror, not just of exposure, but of certain, dangerous consequence. She shoved me away with a desperate strength. The headlights momentarily froze us, two trespassers caught in the act of a forbidden passion. The car, a sleek, black SUV, slowed to a crawl, and the driver, a thick-set man named Gareth, was undeniably watching. Elara's terror was palpable, a cold wave radiating off her. "Go! Now, Alex!" she hissed, her urgency absolute. She fumbled desperately for her keys, her hand shaking violently, trying to unlock the gate and disappear. I didn't move. The fear in her eyes wasn't just about discovery, it was about the dangerous retaliation that discovery would bring. But the moment of being caught, of having our secret exposed to an outsider, had a paradoxical effect on me. It stripped away all caution and focused the overwhelming intensity of our attraction into a single, defiant point. "No," I stated, my voice low and firm, stepping directly between her and the approaching car. "I'm not leaving you here." Gareth stopped the SUV completely, the engine idling menacingly. He rolled down the window just enough to reveal his cold, impassive face. He didn't say a word, his silence a heavy, judgmental weight. Elara seized my arm, her nails digging in, fueled by a frantic adrenaline. "Alex, please! He'll ruin you! He'll ruin us both!" The threat of he, her powerful fiancé, hung in the air, transforming our desperate closeness into a public, high-stakes rebellion. I ignored Gareth's silent surveillance and turned fully to Elara, my hands cupping her face, forcing her to look only at me. All the suppressed emotion, the agonizing jealousy, the shared longing, exploded to the surface. "I don't care," I breathed out, my voice ragged with raw passion. "I don't care about him, or his threats, or this whole fabricated life. I only care about this." And I kissed her. It was a reckless, passionate, and deeply satisfying culmination of weeks of torment. The kiss wasn't gentle, it was desperate, a furious claim, a mutual confession of everything we had been trying to deny. She responded instantly, an explosion of stored-up emotion, her arms wrapping tightly around my neck, pulling me closer until there was no space left between us. It was a commitment, a betrayal, and the sweetest freedom all at once, played out under the cold, harsh scrutiny of a hostile witness. We broke apart, both of us breathless, our chests heaving, our eyes locking in a mixture of defiance and devastating realization. "Now you have to go," she whispered, her voice husky, her eyes blazing with a mixture of fear and triumph. "He knows now. You need to run." Before I could process her command, the twist delivered its brutal shock. Gareth, the man who had just witnessed the entire affair, didn't move or radio his boss. Instead, he simply reached into the car's console, pulled out a small, folded piece of paper, and tossed it onto the ground near my feet. He gave Elara a sharp, cryptic look, a look that held zero hostility and a hint of weary warning, then put the SUV in gear and drove smoothly away, disappearing around the corner as silently as he had arrived. I stared at the spot where the note landed, my mind spinning. Why would his associate let us go? Why the note? Elara's breath caught. She snatched the paper, her eyes scanning the handwritten lines, and her face went utterly slack, not with fear this time, but with a paralyzing, horrifying realization. "What is it?" I demanded, grabbing her arm. She looked up at me, her face pale, the confession of our kiss instantly overshadowed by a monstrous new truth. It's from him," she stammered, holding the note out. I read the 3 sentences, and the satisfaction of the kiss curdled into a devastating, gut-wrenching betrayal. The note wasn't a threat. It was a thank you. "Thank you for confirming. I'm free now. You were the only out." The note trembled violently in Elara's hand, its devastating message echoing the horrifying truth. He, her powerful, controlling fiancé, hadn't been an unsuspecting victim. He had been orchestrating this. The entire affair, the intense glances, the charged silence, even the message about being suspicious, had been a setup, a calculated means to secure his own exit. He used us," she whispered, the raw passion of our kiss instantly replaced by a crushing realization of manipulation. The bold decision we had just made, our reckless public embrace, was exactly the outcome he had desired. "An out?" I repeated, my own voice hollowed out by disbelief. "He wanted you to cheat? He wanted the proof?" Elara nodded slowly, tears welling up, but these were tears of humiliation and rage, not fear. He couldn't break the engagement himself without triggering complex legal and financial penalties set by his family. He needed incontrovertible proof of infidelity to terminate the contract and claim his freedom. He needed me to be the villain. The emotional breakdown was swift and absolute. She sank against the gate, covering her face with shaking hands, the weight of his calculated betrayal crushing her. The man she thought had been her captor had simply used her as a tool for his convenience, destroying her reputation and our nascent love in the process. The library? I realized, the memories clicking into place with sickening clarity. That message, "He's suspicious." It wasn't a warning. It was a prompt. It was bait. Elara confirmed, her voice muffled by shame. "He knew I was drawn to you. He saw us together in the library before. He planted the seed, made me feel guilty and reckless, pushing me right to the edge, knowing I'd eventually fall into your arms." The raw consequence of our choices hit me hard. We hadn't been daring lovers defying a tyrannical fiancé. We had been pawns in a cold, corporate-level breakup strategy. The high-energy drama of the past weeks was suddenly deflated, leaving behind the bitter residue of manipulation. I knelt beside her, pulling her close, not with the feverish passion of minutes ago, but with a deep, resolute tenderness. The confrontation was over, but a new, more difficult one had begun, facing each other in the aftermath of being played. "It doesn't matter," I said fiercely, pushing her hair back from her tear-streaked face. "He got what he wanted, his freedom. But so did we. He forced the issue. He made you take the risk that you never would have taken otherwise." She looked at me, her eyes clouded with the residual pain of betrayal, but slowly, a spark of hope, and a bold decision, began to emerge. "He'll destroy my reputation. His family will make sure of it. Then let them," I countered, the fire of genuine commitment replacing the reckless heat of the affair. We were looking for an out too, Elara. An out from our separate, lonely lives. He gave us a brutal exit. We took the fall together. Let's make the consequence worth it. I took the crumpled note from her hand and threw it onto the wet pavement, a dramatic, final rejection of his control. I pulled her up, steadying her trembling body. The air was still thick with the residue of conflict, but it was now cleared of pretense. There was no more secret, no more he. Just us, standing in the aftermath of a devastating setup, but finding a surprising, clear path toward a final romantic ending. Where do we go? She asked, her voice small but steady, resting her head against my chest. Anywhere, I promised, looking down at the woman who had shattered and rebuilt all my beliefs about love in a single, chaotic month. We start over. Together. The note lay crumpled and soaked on the pavement, a monument to the manipulation that had brought us together. But as I held Elara in the cool, silent night, all the calculated moves of her ex-fiancé dissolved into irrelevance. The only truth left was the fierce, unwavering connection between us. Anywhere, I repeated, pulling back slightly to look into her eyes, which were finally clearing, the deep, soulful wisdom I first recognized in the library replacing the recent terror. No more secrets, no more looking over your shoulder. Just us figuring it out. A slow, genuine smile, the one I had fallen for, broke through her anguish. It was imperfect, still tinged with the exhaustion of the past weeks, but it was hers. Starting over sounds terrifying, she admitted, her hand moving from my chest to cup the back of my neck, pulling me into a tender, gentle embrace. Good, I murmured. I like terrifying with you. She leaned into the crook of my shoulder, and for a long moment, we just stood there, drawing strength from the physical comfort. The intense, charged tension that had defined our early encounters was replaced by a profound, settling peace. We were no longer chasing a forbidden spark, we were building a grounded future. That message, Alex, she said softly, her breath warm against my ear. The one that changed everything. Even though it was bait, it did change everything. It forced us out of the shadows. It made the decision for us. And I'm glad it did, I confessed, tilting her chin up. Because when I read it, when I saw the fear in your eyes, I didn't run. I knew, with absolute certainty, that I couldn't walk away from you, no matter the risk. This time, when I kissed her, it wasn't a reckless claim or a desperate confession. It was a promise, slow, tender, and deeply meaningful. It was the kiss of two people who had weathered a storm of deceit and emerged bonded, not by fleeting attraction, but by shared danger and mutual devotion. The lingering taste of my lips on hers was a final, undeniable statement. The risk was worth it. We spent the rest of the night driving. Not running away, but simply driving. We left the confines of the city lights and the shadows of her old life behind. We drove toward the coast, the hum of the tires on the empty highway serving as a quiet backdrop to our plans, reckless, disorganized, and beautiful. As the first streaks of pale orange sunlight brushed the horizon, we pulled over at an overlook high above the glittering, dark ocean. The air was fresh, carrying the clean scent of salt and promise. Elara stepped out of the car, stretching her arms above her head, shedding the last vestiges of her controlled past. She looked free. I walked up behind her and wrapped my arms around her waist, pulling her back against my chest, our new life beginning with this shared moment. Look, I whispered, nodding toward the rising sun. New day. No messages, no associates, no games. She tilted her head back, smiling brilliantly. No games, she agreed. She reached up and squeezed my hands, confirming our bond. Just us. And with the ocean stretching out before us, vast and full of uncharted possibilities, I knew the one message on her phone hadn't shattered my belief in love. It had simply cleared the wreckage, allowing the real, messy, and incredibly strong love we found to finally take root.